through a 7,000-ounce goal. Our season total.
The day started like any other at Parker Schnabel's gold mining operation, with the sun just rising over the mountains, casting long shadows across the wash plant and the piles of gravel waiting to be processed. On the computer screens in the control station, everything looked perfect. The numbers were steady, the production rate consistent, and all the equipment was showing green lights. The water pressure was right, the conveyor belts were moving at the expected pace, and all the sensors indicated that the operation was running smoothly. On paper, Parker's mining operation was performing exactly as planned. But when Parker Schnabel himself walked down to the wash plant to inspect the material, his stomach sank. What he saw was far from perfect. For 3 whole days, the crew had been running gravel through the plant that didn't have any gold at all. The gravel looked wrong, the color was off, and the texture was not what experienced miners would call pay dirt. This was overburden, the rock and soil that lies above the gold-bearing layer, and it should never have been sent through expensive, high-maintenance equipment designed to separate gold from dirt and rock. Parker's eyes widened as he looked at the material moving slowly along the conveyor belt, knowing that every hour of processing was costing fuel, water, labor, and wear on the machines, all for something that would produce no gold at all. He climbed up to the control station, where the computer monitors continued to display reassuring green lights, indicating that everything was normal. But nothing was normal. The crew had unknowingly wasted 3 full days, and in late September, as winter approached, every wasted day could affect the season's final gold tally. Parker felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had made decisions to modernize his operation, to rely on technology, sensors, and automated monitoring systems to improve efficiency. But he now realized that machines could not replace human judgment. The human eye, the experience of decades in the field, could not be ignored. And for 3 days, that lesson had been painfully clear. As the morning crew arrived, coffee cups in hand and ready for what they assumed would be a productive day, they immediately noticed the tension in Parker's face. Mitch, the experienced foreman, stopped mid-sip of his coffee as his eyes scanned the conveyor belt. His expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief, then to concern. "How long?" he asked in a voice that sounded flat, almost numb. Parker replied quietly, 72 hours, maybe more." The words hung in the air. That was impossible. How could no one have noticed? There had been pan tests, visual checks, and cleanup procedures in the past days, and yet everyone had trusted the system completely. Chris Dumit, the mechanic, arrived and immediately recognized the problem. "Boss, that's not pay dirt," he said bluntly. Parker nodded, confirming the reality. 3 days of work, gone, all because they trusted technology more than their own experience. Crew members gathered near the wash plant, silent at first, then slowly realizing the severity of the mistake. They exchanged worried glances, understanding that if they could not trust their own judgment, what could they trust? Parker felt a mixture of frustration, disappointment, and a deep awareness of how easily efficiency could mask errors. He shut down the wash plant, and the sudden silence was almost deafening. Machinery that had been humming confidently for days was now quiet, but the silence spoke volumes. For 3 days, the operation had been running on autopilot, consuming resources, going through all the motions of mining, but producing nothing. It was a wake-up call, a moment of reckoning that revealed not just a problem with the material, but a deeper issue with the operation itself. Parker thought back to the previous winter, when he had spent weeks researching automated mining systems used by operations in Australia and South Africa. Systems that could track dozens of variables, optimize water flow, adjust processing rates, and send alerts when something went wrong. The consultant who had sold the system explained that experience alone could not catch every problem, but data could. Parker had been convinced This was the future of mining, the way to compete with larger operations. The system cost nearly $200,000 to install, with sensors on excavators, cameras in the plant, and automated testing equipment designed to analyze material in real time. But the theory did not match reality. The system measured what it could measure, but it could not see what really mattered: the judgment, intuition, and experience of a miner who knew how to read the ground. The younger crew members embraced the technology, while the veterans, like Mitch, were cautious. They knew that mining was not just numbers on a screen. It was experience, observation, and understanding that machines could not replicate. Parker had dismissed those concerns at the time, confident that technology would enhance human work rather than replace it. But over the season, the crew had begun to defer to the monitors instead of their own instincts. When someone questioned the material, but the monitors said everything was fine, they trusted the system. When excavators hit unexpected ground, operators kept digging because the sensors indicated acceptable depth. The human judgments that had been the foundation of Parker's family operation was slowly being replaced by screens, lights, and numbers. By the time the mistake was discovered, the lesson was clear. Machines were only tools, not authorities. Experience, intuition, and careful observation could never be ignored, no matter how advanced the technology. This setback was painful, costly, and a humbling reminder that gold mining was as much an art as it was a science. As the crew stood around the wash plant, the hum of machinery had stopped, but the tension in the air was almost louder than any engine. Parker walked among his team, watching as the reality of 3 wasted days slowly sank in. Some faces showed confusion, others frustration, and a few were quietly blaming themselves. But Parker knew it was not just individual mistakes, it was a systemic issue. The operation had become too reliant on technology, and the crew had stopped using their own judgment. Every miner on the team had years of experience, yet they had been conditioned to trust the monitors over their own eyes. It was a harsh lesson in the balance between modern innovation and traditional wisdom. Parker thought back to his grandfather, John Schnabel, who had built the mining operation with a simple philosophy: technology should serve the miner, not the other way around. Equipment was a tool to enhance the work of skilled humans, not a replacement for experience. Parker had strayed from that philosophy in his enthusiasm for modernization. The new automated monitoring system, while impressive on paper, could not detect the subtleties that a human miner would notice immediately. During spring training, when the system was first introduced, the response had been mixed. Younger crew members were excited by the technology, while the older miners voiced caution. Mitch, in particular, had warned Parker privately. "Boss, I get that technology helps, but mining isn't just numbers on a screen. You have to feel the ground, see it, know when something's off," he had said. Parker had reassured him that the system would enhance judgment, not replace it. But in practice, the crew had become increasingly reliant on the system, and Parker, focused on efficiency, had not noticed the shift. The mistake of processing overburden for 3 days was a direct result of that change. The automated monitors showed normal operations, but they could not distinguish pay dirt from worthless rock. Excavator logs confirmed that the wrong material had been dug and sent to the wash plant without anyone questioning it. The pan tests, visual checks, and cleanup results had been ignored because the system said everything was fine. It was a powerful reminder that while technology could make operations faster and more efficient, it could not replace human observation. Parker gathered the crew to discuss the mistake. He did not want to place blame, but he wanted everyone to understand the seriousness of the situation. They needed to remember that mining was a combination of science, experience, and intuition. Machines could only measure what they were designed to measure. They could not see, feel, or understand the subtle differences that distinguished gold-bearing material from ordinary rock. The conversation was somber. but Parker also wanted it to be a learning moment. Mistakes like this, while costly, could teach valuable lessons. He explained to the crew that the operation needed a balance between technology and human judgment. Automation could handle repetitive tasks, monitor parameters, and provide alerts, but the crew had to maintain responsibility for decisions. Miners could not defer completely to a screen or a green light. Every person had to remain engaged, observant, and ready to question the system when something felt wrong. It was a lesson in humility, recognizing that even the best technology could not replace human skill. As the morning continued, the crew resumed work, but the energy was different. They were more attentive, checking material carefully before it went into the wash plant. Communication between operators improved, with excavators, supervisors, and pan testers coordinating more closely than before. The setback had shaken their confidence, but it had also strengthened their awareness. Each member of the team knew that vigilance and judgment were as important as efficiency. Parker, too, reflected on his own approach. He realized that in his pursuit of modernization, he had neglected the core principles that had made his family operation successful for decades. Experience, intuition, and careful observation were irreplaceable, and even the most advanced equipment was only as good as the people using it. The next steps involved reviewing procedures, retraining the crew to integrate technology with human judgment, and implementing safeguards to prevent a similar mistake in the future. Parker also considered how to improve monitoring without letting it replace human oversight. The lesson was clear. Gold mining required balance. Technology could provide data, but it could not interpret it fully. Human experience, communication, and careful observation remained critical to success. The 3-day setback was painful and costly, but it was also a powerful learning experience. It reminded Parker and his crew that in mining as in life, tools were only effective when combined with skill, awareness, and thoughtful decision-making. It was a humbling reminder that progress could never replace experience, and efficiency without understanding could lead to failure. As the day went on, Parker and the crew began rebuilding their confidence, step by step. They restarted the wash plant with a renewed sense of caution, carefully inspecting each load of gravel before it went through the system. Crew members discussed what had gone wrong, shared their observations, and made plans to avoid repeating the same mistake. Parker emphasized the importance of teamwork, reminding everyone that mining was not just about machines or numbers, but about people working together, using their skills, and trusting their judgment. He also reflected on the role of leadership, recognizing that he had to set an example by balancing reliance on technology with active oversight. Parker had invested heavily in automation because he wanted to improve efficiency and compete with larger operations, but he now saw that efficiency without awareness could lead to serious errors. He spoke with each team member individually, asking for their input and listening carefully to their concerns. This open communication was new for the operation and helped restore trust between Parker and the crew. Everyone understood the stakes. Late September meant limited time before winter, and every day of wasted effort could impact the season's total gold output. The setback was serious, but it was also an opportunity to improve. Parker reviewed the automated system and identified areas where human judgment needed to take priority over the sensors. For example, pan tests would be double-checked visually. Excavator operators would report any unexpected ground immediately, and supervisors would verify that processed material was indeed gold-bearing before continuing. The crew also agreed to maintain a balance between efficiency and careful observation, using the technology as a tool rather than an authority. Lessons learned from this incident would shape future operations, making the crew more attentive, more cautious, and more collaborative. Parker thought about the philosophy that had guided his grandfather, John Schnabel. Equipment serves the miner, not the other way around. He realized that while technology could enhance performance, it could never replace experience, intuition, and careful observation. As the day progressed, the wash plant operated smoothly, but now with a human layer of judgment added to every process. Each person remained engaged, attentive to the material, and willing to question the automated system when something seemed off. This change in mindset, sparked by a costly mistake, strengthened the team and prepared them for the challenges of the season ahead. Parker reflected on the broader lesson as he watched the crew work. Mining is more than just efficiency, numbers, and machines. It is about observation, judgment, teamwork, and learning from mistakes. Even the most advanced technology cannot replace human skill and experience. The setback was a reminder that progress must be balanced with wisdom. Technology can provide tools, but people must remain in control, using both knowledge and experience to guide decisions. By the end of the day, the crew had regained focus, but they carried with them the memory of the 3 wasted days, a cautionary tale to remain vigilant, attentive, and engaged. Parker Schnabel understood that the mistake was costly, but it had also strengthened his operation by reinforcing the value of human judgment. The incident would influence the rest of the season, ensuring that the balance between technology and experience remained at the forefront of every decision. Moving forward, Parker and the crew would continue mining, but now with a renewed awareness that efficiency must be paired with observation, machines must be paired with human judgment, and progress must never replace the wisdom earned through experience. The setback was a hard lesson, but it was also an opportunity for growth, understanding, and improvement. Every miner on the team learned that day that even the smallest details matter, and that careful observation and judgment are as valuable as any machine or automated system. Parker Schnabel's operation had faced a major challenge, but by combining technology with human experience, the crew would continue striving for success, learning from mistakes, and working together to reach their goal of finding gold before winter arrived. It was a reminder that in mining, patience, vigilance, and balance are just as important as efficiency, speed, and innovation. By the time the sun set, Parker and his team had not only corrected their mistake, but had also strengthened the foundations of their operation, preparing for the hard work and challenges that lay ahead. The 3-day setback, though costly and frustrating, had provided invaluable lessons about leadership, teamwork, and the enduring importance of human judgment in a world increasingly dominated by technology. With this experience, the crew was ready to continue their season with renewed focus, awareness, and determination, understanding that gold mining is always a careful balance between man and machine, judgment and data, experience and innovation. But today, standing beside the wash plant, Parker felt the weight of 3 days of wasted effort pressing down on him. The plant had processed material efficiently, but it was all worthless. Not a single ounce of gold had come through. For someone who prided himself on precision, efficiency, and results, this was devastating. As he looked over the machines, Parker thought about the money lost, the time lost, and the impact on the crew who depended on him. The day was spent investigating, trying to figure out exactly where the operation had failed. Each answer he uncovered made the situation look worse. It wasn't a single breakdown. It was a chain of small failures, a series of mistakes and oversights that together revealed something deeper, something fundamentally wrong with how the operation had been functioning for weeks. The excavator operator explained that he had noticed the material changing as early as Tuesday morning. It had seemed lighter, less consolidated, but the sensors still showed that they were in the pay zone, and the automated analyzer reported acceptable readings. The operator questioned himself, but ultimately trusted the numbers, thinking perhaps he was mistaken. The wash plant supervisor admitted She had noticed the cleanup looked light on Wednesday, but the automated scales said otherwise. She, too, trusted the numbers over her own eyes. The quality control technician, whose job it was to do hourly checks, relied entirely on the automated testing. This had been the standard protocol since spring, and everyone had accepted it as reliable. Each crew member had noticed something, but none of them acted, because they all deferred to the system. The machines were supposed to measure everything, catch every anomaly, and keep the operation running smoothly. But the machines were not human. They could not sense subtle changes in texture, color, or feel, things that experienced miners relied on instinctively. And that blind trust in technology had cost them. But Parker discovered something more troubling as he looked deeper. It wasn't just the automated system, it was the people. Crew members were going through motions, following procedures, checking boxes on digital forms, but they were no longer fully engaged in their work. The morning geology meetings that had once been a place to discuss the ground, to share observations, and to plan strategy, had been reduced to brief updates about equipment. Pan testing, which had been done by hand throughout the day, had been scaled back, because the automated system was supposedly monitoring everything. The casual conversations, the sharing of knowledge, the collective learning that had built the team's skill over years, were gone. Rick, one of Parker's key operators, approached him in the shed. His face was troubled, and he spoke carefully. "Boss, can I be honest? I've been thinking about leaving, and some of the others have too. This isn't the operation I signed up for. We used to mine gold. Now we babysit machines. I became a miner, not a computer monitor." The words hit Parker harder than any production report could. The realization was sinking in. Something had changed. The work no longer felt like mining. The crew had lost a sense of purpose, and even Parker, who had been proud of his efficient system, could feel the emotional distance forming. Later, Mitch found Parker alone in his truck, staring at the reports that now seemed meaningless. The numbers showed steady rates, consistent fuel consumption, and optimal machine use. But they did not show what really mattered: the wasted effort, the frustration, the growing disconnection among the crew. Mitch spoke plainly, climbing into the passenger seat. "We need to talk about morale," Mitch continued. "Guys are showing up late, doing the minimum. Conversations stop when you walk by. The crew is falling apart, and it started before the last 3 days of barren gravel." Parker realized he had been too focused on machines, on modernization, and on competing with bigger operations. The confrontation with Mitch extended late into the night. They sat in the truck while the Klondike cold pressed against the windows. Mitch's voice was steady but blunt. "You turned us into technicians when we wanted to be miners. The system doesn't need our judgment, only our labor. And then you wonder why we stopped using our judgment." Parker tried to defend his decisions, but he couldn't. The automated systems were meant to help, not replace anyone, but that was exactly what they had done. The crew's minds, their judgment, and their instincts had been sidelined. Parker thought about his grandfather, John Schnabel, who had run a small but consistently profitable operation without automation. The secret wasn't machines or technology. It was experience, skill, and pride in the work. Modernization had made the operation efficient, but it had also drained its soul. Mitch spoke again, softer this time. "Modernizing equipment is fine, but you modernize people out of relevance. You made them feel like their experience didn't matter, like the computer knew better. And when people feel they don't matter, they stop caring." Parker looked out at the crew gathered around the wash plant that morning. They weren't angry. They were disconnected, embarrassed, and unsure. Mitch continued, explaining how the younger members of the crew adapted more easily to technology, but the veterans felt humiliated. They knew they should have noticed the problem, but the system had trained them to ignore their instincts. Parker felt a deep sense of responsibility. The operation had shifted, but it hadn't been for the better. It was efficient, yes, but it was no longer mining as he and his grandfather had known it. The night stretched on, with Parker and Mitch discussing the balance between modern tools and human skill, and the importance of trust, engagement, and purpose for every person on the team. The lessons were clear. Efficiency alone couldn't replace judgment, pride, or the human element of mining. Without that, even the best technology couldn't prevent failure. The following morning, Parker walked across the yard, the chill of the Klondike biting through his jacket. He watched his crew moving mechanically between machines, their faces down, expressions blank. They followed the digital readouts and automated instructions, but there was no spark, no energy, no sense of ownership.